we go. Yeah, so you have a choice of continuing or leaving. Oh, and the names won't be visible. Okay, I thought it did that. It does take your name off. So any of you who are working under an alias are fine. So I will just, I'll go ahead and start now. So good morning. We've got a nice crowd. 30 some people have showed up this morning. It's a nice day to stay in for brunch, and I'm pretty sure the gallery is also there and open. So folks who are at the gallery, folks who are at home, folks who pulled their car off to the side of the road or whatever. Hi, I'm Michelle Sabatier, and I am a member at Side Street Arts in Southeast Portland. And January is Print Month in Portland. And I think it sort of started with the Portland Art Museum doing their fine art print show, and a lot of the other galleries. Oh, there I see the gallery one. A lot of the other galleries just followed suit and took advantage of, you know, people thinking about prints. And it's one of my favorite shows that we do because I love educating people about what prints are, all the different kinds of prints that there are, and that prints are still art. We distinguish between prints and reproductions in the gallery. And there's still that feeling out there among a lot of people who think, oh, it's just a print. You know, it's not, I shouldn't have to pay much for it. And so especially today, our preview, if you didn't see our Tuesday night preview, that video is available on our website. You can link to it. It's on the events page, or you can still link to it from the front page now, where many of the artists joined us and talked about sort of their inspiration and just introduced their pieces, sort of said what they would have said to you if you were standing together at a live opening. And then today is our Artist Talk series, where we get to go into studios. And now with as many artists as we have, we couldn't do a big, long, I don't know if the word's open studio or copyrighted, but we couldn't do a thing like that. So we'll just have, 5-10 minutes from folks. Some people sent me slides. I got some videos. Some people will just, take over the screen and talk. So if you put your view into speaker view, then when the speaker wants to talk, if they want to just hold something up and show you, I'll go ahead and quit my screen sharing, and then you'll have speaker view will be the green outline will be on the person who is actually talking. And for the rest of it, I'll be doing the screen sharing and have the PowerPoint going. So that's about it. Most of you are muted as you come in. And if you could kind of keep it muted, especially if you're, eating breakfast, or I unfortunately have a dog that's going to squeak her toys, but I will at least mute when other people are talking. So, well, we can go ahead and get going on the inked image. And we changed things up this year. We screen sharing. We put out a national call for our show this year, and it really paid off. We got some terrific art from, we have art from Massachusetts, we have art from Oklahoma, I know Pennsylvania, some New York, we have Mississippi, I think we have an Idaho, but yeah, we're missing the middle a lot, but we've got art from all kinds of folks. And I think it's great for Portland to be able to see some new work. And some of it's just, it's such a wonderful thing to open those boxes, and it's somebody who's unfamiliar, and the work is always better than it looks online. So we have a great collection this year, and it's up for until the 31st, so through this month. And you can see from the photo here, every artist has one piece hanging, and then we have the bins where they sent their choice. Some people did not send additional pieces of the one that's framed. We do have a lot of monotypes, and so those are one of a kind. And when you see the one framed or unframed, get it when you see it, because there's no more addition. And we've got a couple of people who will talk about monotype today anyway, so you'll kind of understand why those are not additioned. And you'll see why there can be additions on others if you're new to the alchemical arts of printmaking. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we're starting with Davis Tassell. He is a represented artist at the gallery, and he has some new pieces for us. this time, and is going to talk a little bit about his process. But you can always find Davis's work in the gallery. He is one of our really popular, I don't want to say resident, well, represented artists here, and he's local to Portland. And he changed up the way he did things this year. So I'm eager for him to talk. So go ahead, Davis, and I'll mute myself.
Let's see, this doesn't look familiar as far as, there it is.
There you go.
Yeah, great. And Michelle, I think in the interest of time, first let me say hello to this wonderful convocation of fellow printmakers. It's a rare thing, and it was wonderful to see a shot of the gallery with all that black and white work. You know, black and white artists are often relegated to small rooms off the side in a lot of galleries, and it looks really great. I'm looking forward to coming down to being in the gallery space there. There's a print from my July show, and this is I've pulled out some technical stuff from the PowerPoint that ran a long time for that show. What I'd like you to do, Michelle, is kind of move fairly briskly through the first 7 slides.
Okay, so this is your process. This is a previous print.
And then some shots next. You know, I draw on site, but not, and keep going. Taking notes in sketchbook and getting the feeling of the subject and so on. Keep next one. Yeah, that's a spectacular. Actually, that one, let's go back for a moment. That tree, Michelle, is a dove.
Backwards or stay on that one? Stay on the fallen tree?
Let's just keep going forward. I could go off in raptures about.
I'm sure there's a story about that tree.
Yeah.
You can record it separately and we'll post it.
So I use also, like so many now, photo references. I take extensive photo references, although none of them ever are direct translations into the print. The main source is my field notes, and then a kind of combination of photo references and imaginative recreation. So that the print, you can roll on to the next one. Yeah. Next slide. This is an artist, Stowe Wengenroth, who was the back one. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Who was a major influence. Can we back up one?
Yeah.
Who was a stone lithographer. And I was really entranced by what a lithograph could do in terms of the pencil quality that is actually in the print, that you could have the same kind of tonal range and subtlety and incisive detail that you can get with a pencil. And that was it for me. I'd done quite a bit of pencil drawing, particularly carbon pencil drawings, which is a charcoal pencil that makes a beautiful velvety black, but you can sharpen it to a fine line and you can get a whole tonal range and so on. So I'd done a few years of carbon pencil drawings, and then, wow, you could make a print of that, you know, like that with that effect. So my prints in this show are waterless lithographs, and this is my kind of hybrid process. It's a lithograph, but it is not the chemistry of an original stone lithograph. In this case, the drawing is done on a sheet of glass. That's a 1/4-inch plate glass there. And there's a Mueller with carborundum powder being spread out on it with water. And you grind the glass in the same way that you grind a lithography stone, or a very similar way. With the carborundum powder, you grind the surface of the stone to a texture, a kind of a velvety texture, which is the source of tooth. There's a tooth on it. It's the source of the halftone that allows you to get the grayscale in the printing process.
It's almost like a mezzotint, isn't it?
That's true in a stone, and it's also true on the glass. So I loved drawing. I did stone lithography for some years. I got quite a ways into it and rebuilt my own press and so on. And life circumstances left no details there, but I moved and had to leave my press on the West Coast and so on. And then right about that time, I heard about this process called waterless lithography, and somebody suggested I might like it, and they were totally right. Because it gave me many of the virtues of a stone lithograph, and actually a lot of new virtues and not so many of the downsides. So like toxicity and a lot of others factors. So you grain the glass. This is going to be 10 steps. You grain the glass and it's got this tooth in it. And then you draw, as you see a little desktop there, drawing going on a small print. In front of my hands, there's the sheet of glass, and I'm drawing in this case with Prismacolor black pencils. That was just a test sample. Let's go on to the next slide, please.
There's a little lag. There you go.
So there on the left, you see the translucent sheet of glass face down. It's face down, so the drawing surface is going to land on that blue square. And that blue square is an aluminum plate. It's a positive acting aluminum photolithoplate. And this waterless process was actually an attempted commercial process about 40 years ago. First 3M had it, nobody could get it to really work. It was way too finicky on machines. So, but the technology was adapted by the fellow that taught it to me, a Canadian, for private studios, because he found a way to make silicone in his studio by just taking house painters. I'll show that later. Anyway, that's what that plate is. It's a photolitho sensitive positive acting. So I've basically in my hands in the left photo, you've got what is a positive transparency, right? And it's going to land on that photo plate, and then that little lid is going to come down on it. It's a vacuum frame, and it'll squeeze them together very tightly. So essentially, I'm going to be making a contact printed image, very similar to what you would do if you're making a film contact sheet. And it's 1-to-1 with the drawing to a very high level of detail, down to every granule of if you're using graphite, every little particle of graphite translates into that plate photographically. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, Davis, when I first saw yours, I did a double take that they were lithographs because the detail is so fine.
Yeah,
I could have sworn they were etchings.
Do this at all on a stone. You're drawing with mushy wet wax pen crayons and so on, and I adapted to that and worked with it. But coming from the pencil, I really love that combination of tonal range and incisive line. So you expose the plate to UV light over my head. You can't see it. There's an ultraviolet light. You expose it, and we can go to the next slide. This is all the steps of developing, coating, and curing the plate. So on the left, that blue thing has been hit with the developer, and you can see it beginning to come out. And then below there's the developed plate. And then in the middle, those two shots, I'm coating the developed plate with the image on it with silicone. And that's, as you see in the back there, that's just regular household silicone, 100% silicone, thinned with slow-acting mineral spirits you can see it kind of dripping off the end of the spoon there. It's like a syrup, very thin syrup, and you buff it very similar to gum arabic in the litho process. Buffing it really tight is important. And then the image is cured, either with heat or with just leaving it overnight. And it becomes this kind of mask over the image, right? And all the non-image area, the silicone sticks to it, all that gray area, the silicone is sticking to it. Okay, let's go to the next. Oh, well, no, leave it there. I'm sorry. I have to talk about that last picture. Sorry. So the silicone coats the whole plate and dries, and then you come back and come with the developer again, and you wash away the image. and it goes away, and underneath that image is just raw aluminum surrounded by the silicone mask. Is that clear? That I hope that there. So it's there. The gray parts of the plate.
Sorry.
That's okay. We'll go on in the interest of time. So you've got this plate that is silicone masked, and then you can see in the left-hand picture rolling up. A significant thing is that I'm using little speedball rollers. Normally litho rollers are wonderful, big, heavy things and large diameter and so on. That doesn't work in this process. And the ink is, for us printmakers, it's really gnarly, ugly ink. It's super stiff and very tacky. And it's necessary to do that to keep it in control in this chemistry. And the tiny rollers allow you to really control the ink much better than the big rollers on different parts of the image. And I'm inking it. You can see the inky roller is actually sitting on an aluminum sheet there. That's been coated with silicone, and the ink will not stick to the silicone. That's the key to it. You know, silicone, if you use it in caulking on a window on a house, you can't paint it, you know, and it won't stick. So when you roll the inky roller over the plate, it won't stick to the silicone of the plate, but then it fills up on the image. So one of the advantages for me that was wonderful about this is that the silicone allows you to carry a much heavier ink load than a conventional water ink lithograph, like either an aluminum plate lithograph or a metal plate lithograph. You can really load certain areas and lighten up other areas really well with that. So I'm printing this lithograph on an etching press, so another layer of confusion here. But
well, there is some overlap in the basic process.
Yeah, nowadays more people are doing that in various ways. So dampened paper, we can go to the next one, and printing, just running it through the press. And there's the print that has been through this step-by-step process. And we can do this even at, we'll see the next two slides, even at a very large scale.
So step 11 is success. That's every time, right? Every single time. Step 11 is success. Right?
So we know, you know, one of the most
right.
active areas in a printmaker's studio is the waste.
Yes. Yeah. I have big balls of wax that I scraped off of things.
Right. Yeah.
I was thinking it's like the 19th hole on the golf course, right? Is your success.
Well, that print is actually an example of the kind of detail you can get with this process relative to a stone lithograph. And this is that the same process works. You can go to the next one on a very large scale print. And one of the aspects of inking with a small roller like that is that you can really control which parts of the image get how much ink and not. You know, you can clear the image well, and if they're over inked and so on. So it's got a lot of advantages. Next slide is the completion of the big print.
So the one that we're on, or do you want the next one after this?
There's one more, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and that's a
beautiful one.
In the July show.
Yeah.
And I think I've come in very close to 5 minutes here. So that was quite a sprint.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah. Davis had a two-person show, him and a 3D artist in July. And we had a technical problem and didn't record your PowerPoint then. So now we've got you saved for posterity.
Okay.
And you might have, I don't think you have any of the same prints in the bin, but you do still have some prints from the July show, right?
Yeah.
People can contact you through the gallery.
Let me show the last slide.
Yeah, that's in the show, right? Is that the? Yeah, I love this one.
That's my most recent print, and actually my four most recent prints are all COVID prints, and this is a tree here in Portland, a beech tree that I mentioned in the previous talk. You can see it at Stark and 47th Street on the east side here, and I, I really felt the need in that unstable and unsettled time to make an image that reflected that need and the modeling of stability. For me, that kind of combination of grounded openness that this tree represents is really emblematic of something that is meaningful to me. And in quite a contrast to one of my favorite prints from earlier, the earlier show, which was the quite fragile and a delicate, what was the name of that piece? I'm trying to think. Anyway, it was a graphite drawing, and this one really for me is a completion of the virtues of this kind of lithography, combination of fine detail and rich, really good, Portland black.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you talked at more length about your change of your COVID prints in the Tuesday preview, that you had moved for, because you can't travel and go to the places where these historic trees are, you start to notice the trees around you in a different way. And I think that's a lovely response. There's so many sort of hidden messages in this one too that I see. The scar, of course, right in the middle, and then that circle, the looking through the circle. And today, for the first time, I noticed the branches that fade away up in the upper right, like you're really looking up into that gives you just know that there's more over there. This is a great print, Davis. And I think there's a few of these.
I like it a lot. I have to say. That's I like this. It's not that usual to have a kind of comfortable acceptance of the work soon after it comes off the press, but this one, it was just like, I made the print and it was, yeah, thank you.
That's when you get step 11 success, right?
Yeah.
It is, yeah, it's lovely. And a lot of what Davis talked about with this, you went way more into technical detail than other people did, but that's good because so many of the same concepts will be there, like the selective inking and, holding more ink in an area. I have a question about the silicone though, real quick. Is it squishy? Do you get, because I'm thinking of like, metal and stuff when you have a cut line, does it hold? Like how many prints can you get off of it?
It's very thin. You thin it to like syrup and buff it down. And when it's dry, it's sticky. It's a little sticky. It's a curious substance. There's a whole thing about how it works. Silicone's a curious material.
Weird stuff, yeah.
It's actually not really impervious, but water will beat up on it. It's kind of related to Gore-Tex and some of its properties.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it would be like a softer plate, right? Just a plate that's going to break down. The quality of your lines is going to break down sooner than a metal plate.
It's pretty darn durable. Yeah, there are other problems, but printmakers know that.
Well, it wouldn't be art if you weren't balancing, one issue against another, right?
Well, my 10 minutes, I've taken a full.
Okay, yeah. So, but yeah, again, I'm glad you were first because a lot of what you covered, the same vocabulary will keep coming in. So we're going to switch to Jennifer Hartman. I think, if I'm doing this right. Why am I not advancing? Here we go. Okay.
No, Jessica.
Jessica. Oh my God. Okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm typing so fast. I'm really sorry. Oh gosh.
It's
Can I go
Jessica.
into? I'm gonna go. You keep talking. No. It is Jessica Hartman, and I will. Melody, can you type Jessica Hartman's website address? I will send it to you. Can you type that in the chat? I wasn't going to put everybody's website, but because I gave her the wrong, I misnamed her. I'm really sorry. I will send Melody your website, and she'll put it in the chat for everybody. Forgive me.
Thank you.
with names like mine, I'm very sensitive to right names, wrong names, and spellings. So anyway, Jessica Hartman, but your piece is front and center in the window, this beautiful Oregon grape. There's something about this that's just from another time and yet modern that I just love.
Well, I'm very flattered that you put it in the window.
Did you want to just talk over this, or do you want me to quit screen sharing? So do you have things to hold up, or do you want to just talk
Yes,
over
I
this?
have things. I'm going to sort of carry my computer around so that people can see what I do.
Okay, then I will quit the screen sharing. If I can get my mouse down here. I never know where my mouse is on here. No, my cat's going for my keyboard. Screen sharing. I can't see my mouse when I'm in PowerPoint, so excuse me.
Please.
I don't want a new share. Oh, I'm really sorry here. Nope, that just to the next slide. I don't know if there's a key command to stop screen sharing. That's what I need to learn. If anyone knows if there's a key command to stop screen sharing, unmute yourself and tell me. So I do a little research after every single.
S, I think, Michelle.
Hmm?
Alt capital S, I think.
Okay. Oh, thank you. What is Alt on? Is that option? Oh, Alt. Yeah, Alt capital S. Alt Shift S. No.
I think Alt S is here.
S is in save.
Yes.
There
There
you
you
go.
Hey.
No, that just closed my window.
Oh, well, I
Oh
see.
no, I'm no longer screen sharing. Okay, sounds good. Okay, thank you. All right. So now when Jessica talks, you should be able to see her on the screen. Okay, hey.
Okay, hi. Okay, I guess I'll put this on speaker view for myself too. Yeah. Anyway, I'm Jessica Hartman, and I'm very flattered to be asked to do this, and I'm not as well organized as Davis, so you'll just bear with me, and I think this will possibly be shorter too. Just to tell you that I work in a technique of acrylic monotype, which is also known as strappo, which is a word that comes from the Italian and basically means stripping away. And this is actually, it's funny because your show is called The Inked Image, and this is a kind of printmaking that doesn't use ink. So here we are. I wanted to show you how I do it. It's a process that I learned from a very nice man named Bob Surratt, who gave a workshop in Atelier Meridian here in Portland. And I am eternally thankful to Bob for having introduced this to me. It's a great compromise between painting and printmaking. And I've been doing an awful lot of it, especially during the pandemic, since I can do it at home with quite minimal equipment. And so I'm going to move you around here a little bit so that we'll come over to my work table, which is here. I hope you can see something of it anyway. I use glass plates. This is the plate.
Down, point down just a little bit downward.
All right.
There you go.
Okay, here we have the back of a glass plate. I work on the back. The front, this is not finished, but this is the front. So it's still a work in progress. But basically I can, on the front, on the plate, I can draw on the front of the plate in order to know what I'm going to do in this print. And then I flip it around and I work on the back and I apply my acrylic paint in various ways. It's a great medium because it's so flexible, and because it's so flexible, you can use pen and acrylic ink. You can use paint. You can use collage. You can do textures. You can do flat surfaces. It's really fun that way. The downside is that it's very picky when you're trying to get the print out. And I'll just explain briefly, since it's not possible really to show you materially how I do it. When I have finished the design on the plate, I cover it with gesso, several layers of acrylic gesso. And then to transfer it to paper, I put a layer of wet acrylic gesso on the paper and wet acrylic gesso on the plate. Then I stick them together, I pile books on top of them and wait. And after I find that, sometimes Bob, who did the workshop, told me, oh, after 45 minutes, it's okay. But I don't feel safe until I've left it overnight. And so the next morning I come in and I take off the books and I have to separate the paper from the plate. And this is where it gets tricky because sometimes it doesn't want to come off well. You have to stick a palette knife between the plate and the paper and jiggle it at the corners and just make sure that you get all the edges unglued, and then you can strip it off. And so just to give you a couple of examples of finished ones, these are ones that I've been working on recently. I don't know how well it looks on the screen here. But anyway, this is the kind of thing that you can come up with. Did you see it?
Is that what gives it the kind of pixelated? A lot of yours have this little pointillism look in them. Is it
Well,
the strap?
I do that because I like, you don't have to do that. I do it because I like it.
Okay.
I draw it
that
that way.
Result of the Strapo. Okay.
No, I mean, it's one of the results of the Strapo, but it doesn't have to be that way because I've done ones too that have, areas of flat surface, and also ones that incorporate collage, like the Oregon grape that's in the gallery.
Yeah.
That included, the background is collaged on that.
Yeah, you've got some wonderful prints in the gallery in addition to the Oregon grape that's in the window. That one's framed. I think you've got a couple of Oregon grapes that aren't framed. And
not Oregon grapes. That was the only one of that.
Oh, that's right. It's only one. But then you've got you've got some beautiful nature ones, and you have there was the one that's COVID spring, that big tree.
Oh, the big tree, yes, like Davis. I did a big tree for the beginning of COVID.
Yeah. So we were talking about the black and white and the power of black and white, which is really striking, and I love to see a wall of black and white like that too. But there's a lot of really colorful art too, and Jessica's is some of that. The Orange City one, and I love the Bell manhole cover piece. They have a collage. They all have a collage element to them as well. Except not the tree one, the COVID tree.
The tree was not a collage at all.
It's an image, yeah.
It was.
They have a wonderful quality.
The idea of the tree was actually, it was the tree, but it was also just the fact that the park was so empty. Nobody was there. It was that was, and so the tree kind of took over.
Yeah. It was lovely, and I'm enjoying seeing the sort of not unconscious but surprise reactions to COVID. It's not like people set out to say I'm going to do a thing in reaction to COVID, but a lot of us as artists, is how we process things, and we find ourselves saying halfway through, like, oh right, I'm doing this now because I've been alone, or I can't go travel to where I work, or I can't get to my press. Sometimes there's so many great stories of sometimes the obstacle is the thing that really sets up the success, having that one, like remember in painting class when they would say, oh, you can only use these 2 colors, and you discover how much you can do with that. Having those limits sometimes is good.
Well,
But
thank
yeah,
you.
do come and see Carrie. Jessica's in person are much better, much nicer in person than they are on that, because they have a nice texture to them.
Thank you
Anything
for
else?
letting me talk. And I think that,
Sure.
given the time allotment that you have, we should move on.
Yeah, and we will continue to not, we will have another person who will share his screen, James Wood Wilson, who was at the bottom of the alphabet and in the very last few minutes of our Tuesday night introduction. So if you didn't stay for the whole hour and a half on a Tuesday evening, please go back and watch that. But he's got some wonderful PDFs to show us some of his inspirations and processes and things that are not represented in the gallery, and he might want to be contacted on some of those.
Thank you.
I'm eager to hear about these. So go ahead and do your screen sharing.
Okay. Let's see. Let me know if that comes through. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
You see like
I see, yeah, I see like a little photo.
oh, okay. You don't see me. See
arrangement.
okay. You see this that's moving.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, that's
Yeah, I'm James Wood Wilson, and I am an illustrator here in Portland. I work in animation and other illustration, mostly in animation, but I also I'm a printmaker, and I work out of Atelier Meridian. So my presentation today is mainly to describe how I use my life drawing and sketchbook work as references in both my professional work and in my printmaking. I like to gather images and sketch whenever I can, every day at least. So here's an example of a page from my sketchbook. And like I said in my last little introduction, sometimes some ideas come to me while I'm sketching, and this is an example of where I was sketching a man in a cafe, and I added a little narrative idea by the secondary element of having some literary figures, portraits on the wall maybe, and they're like, so that's like the narrative story of this. But I put this little page together because, as most printmakers know, sometimes the printmaking itself can take longer than the initial idea or inspiration or whatever, and there can be a lot of thinking and humming and hawing over what you're going to do. But this is like some just snapshots of during my process, and they're not they don't explain exactly what everything is going on, but it just shows the contrast between like inspiration and execution. I work in 2 main ways in the print shop. I either do monotypes, which are more which are quicker to execute. You get one monotype and maybe a ghost from that, which is like a second print that you pull from a plate. And then this technique, which is etching and aquatint. So this is just various snapshots of the process, and that's me pulling the print at the end of it. Aquatint is where you have some kind of matrix of texture on the plate, and you it holds the ink. So this is the original sketch that I took from my sketchbook, and then I etched a line onto a plate. This is a print that's pulled from the first marking on the plate. It's a line that is etched into the plate, and it holds the ink. So once I got that line done, then this is the plate with what's called the aquatint texture on it. And I use a technique, I use different techniques, but this one is called spit bite aquatint. And you basically, you cover the plate with this, you can see in this image here, a slight sort of like dust, that's rosin dust. You cover it, you melt it onto the plate. It's like all like printmaking chemistry, but then I use a mixture of the what we call the acid, but it's a chemical, and I paint it on with paint brushes, and it's mixed with, it's called spit bite because you mix it with spit or gum arabic. I like to use spit just because it works really well, and that reduces the surface tension of the acid that you're painting on there, so you don't get like beading. And the reason I use that is because I can control how dark and how light areas are. I can get gradients rather than just like one area that's gray and then a lighter gray or a darker gray. So it's a bit tricky though, because you can't really see what you're getting. So you have to like build up a memory experience of how it looks and how the metal reacts when you put this chemical on it, and it bubbles and it fizzes and it does all these different things. And I end up sort of holding the plate at an angle and painting it on, and then quickly wiping it off with rinsing it off, and it can be nerve-wracking a little bit. And then this is doing that process over and over to get like different levels of grays. And what I was trying to achieve is like areas where the grays are not just one value, they're going from light to dark within the image. So that's a quick indication of that technique. Then another technique that I use is monotype. And again, here's my, this was a story about a rabbit that a friend had written. And I developed the character a bit by doing these quick sketches in my sketchbook. Then I took one of those images and then worked it into this image, which is done in monotype. And monotype is very different. It's like you take a blank, well, the technique that I was using for this, take a blank piece of plate, and you can do lots of different ways of painting onto it or removing. And the system I use is sort of like a reductive method where I scrape away the paint and stuff like that, or the ink. Let me try and make this a little bit bigger so that you can see it. So this is me working on a light table, a clear plastic plate. I've inked it up with that black ink, and now I'm like removing the ink with different tools. Here I'm using a roller, and or I can use Q-tips or anything, you know, that I can wipe away with. It's a lot of fun. It's a bit like it can be a little bit like finger painting or whatever, and it's also forgiving because you can just ink over everything again if you make mistakes, and you can work back and forth, light, dark, dark, light, and it's quite rewarding for going forward and backwards. And I haven't found any media that I've been able to get these sort of like moody black and white darks, and the marks are always kind of like, I don't know, unique to monotype. Here's another one. I use different solvents and whatever to dilute the ink and to make it different textures. This is the one I was working on. I did a black and white plate, and then I put another monotype over the top of that monotype to get the blue, and then on both of them I pulled out highlights. And yeah, and so you just have to sort of register it in the same place in the print. So you're basically doing two monotypes on one piece of paper. And then this is another from the series of the story, Down and Out Bunny Rabbit. Again, if you look, you can see the roll where I've used a roller. I've used chopsticks and Q-tips and things to get that sort of like sad, moody technique. And then here's another one. This is using two monotypes on one piece of paper. I did the black first, and then I used a piece of plastic over that to sort of like sketch out where this black drawing was, and then went in and did a sort of a purple roll up over the top of that and pulled bits of that out to get the whites and lights. So that's the monotype technique that I was using. And then I just wanted to go back into the idea of that I was saying about but I like to use reference from life drawing and sketchbook and whatever. And this is Davis and I go to Hipbone Studio and do a lot of life drawing. So these are some models and from from that drawing studio. And then when I first got to Portland, I was trying to figure out how to do some kind of meaning, how to bring meaning into subjects that are all around us all the time. And one of those things I was thinking about was like the mythology of the elementals. And so here you can see at the top, here are my 4 reference images that I took from, you know, quick sketches at in the studio. Upper right is like doing a quick sort of value thumbnails to sort of plan out how I'm going to make these 4 different prints sort of contrast, like how they're going to look good together as 4 rather than just standalones. Then starting to work out my layout on the bottom here of like these to add a sort of a secondary character, a little bit of narrative, because I wanted each of these 4 characters to not only be different from each other in visually how they look, but also represent the different elements like, you know, fire, earth, water, etc. I'll move on to the next one. This is like a print pulled after I'd done just a line on the drawing. Actually, you know what that is? That's actually the plate after it's been etched, and I've reversed the image to make black on white. So anyway, that's just a technical. It's basically this image reversed and negative. So this is the actual plate. The plate has got some waxy medium on it, which I've drawn into, and then I'm about to dip it into acid. And wherever I've drawn with a needle on it, that'll get the acid will get into the copper and it'll etch down and make a little groove that'll fill up with ink when I ink it. This is all very technical, not as technical as it actually is, but the result is that magically you get ink into a metal plate. Here, this is the 4 plates as they've been after they've been. I've used a spit bite. I've got all the grays on there that I want, and I've inked them up with by putting where is it? Something of some that ink there. I've spread it onto the plates, and then I've wiped it off with these cloths and things, and they're all ready now to go into the printing press and get printed. This was like when I was doing my edition, which is like every one of the every time you pull one of these prints, it has to be as consistent as you can get it. So you make like a set of prints that as your sort of like your ideal, and then you try and match to those. So every little sort of way you wipe them, and that has to be try and be consistent. So that was that stage of it, and then here are the 4 from those plates, and there's the 4 influence the references, and then this is a. So you saw those ones were all black and white, and that's using black ink. And then for a special edition, I did this thing called à la poupée, which is, I think it's French for little dolls or something. It's like you take like a little piece of cloth, and you meant to fold it up into like a little doll-shaped piece, and then you apply the different colored inks to different areas of the print. And I like using this technique because instead of using like 4 plates to make one color image, you use 1 plate and you just like put the ink where you want it, and then you have to try and stop it from all moving around as you wipe it down and whatever. So I did a set of these in color, which you'll see in the bins there, I think. And it would have been a lot of work to do a huge edition like this, and there's no way I can get the color to be consistent. So on these prints, each one is sort of like a unique color version. Then I just wanted to, while I was doing this series, I also experimented with trying to do a monotype from this series, and just to see how different the approach would be. And this is the approach. This is again a black and white plate, and then I printed that, and then I printed over it with another plate to give that color and texture to it. And I know it's fast and rambling, but that's a little window into my process. And yeah. So let's see. Let me stop screen sharing. And stop share. There it is.
Okay.
So that's more about process than actual. Mostly, I wanted to talk about how the early part of how we take images we see around us. Maybe it might be photography or drawings or whatever, and use them as our own references to create the imagery. And quite often, that's sometimes a mystery. It's like, why does somebody draw what they do draw? And it's a little indication of maybe why I draw.
Yeah, it was really fascinating, James, seeing that transition from, the drawing to a really complex prints. And I think a lot of us, doodle and sketch, and then you wonder what you're going to do with that. They're lovely. And yeah, the ones that are in the gallery now are the elementals set. We've got, I think, multiples of the black and whites, but as James said, just the singles of the color ones, which are, when you see those in person, they're so detailed. I can see why you wouldn't want to do a whole lot of those. And then we have the guy who's reading in the bookstore. We have him. And I think those are the only ones that we have.
Yeah, I didn't
Those
put any monotypes in.
are amazing.
Yeah, I didn't put any monotypes in because I felt like I just wanted to keep it more about the technique that I was using. But hopefully that's a little window into like the two sides of my. I think it's nice sometimes when you've been working on a big edition, maybe doing a lot of black and white prints, and you're like working, and then I feel like, oh, I'll just I feel like doing something a bit more spontaneous. Or I say spontaneous, but sometimes the monotypes take more planning and concept to work out. And also you can work, there's a little bit more, with printmaking, there's always something at risk of things going wrong. And with etching, and sometimes those things that go wrong are correctable, and it's incremental. Whereas with a monotype, sometimes it's catastrophic. Everything looks like it's going fine, and then you go to the press, and it just. And Davis mentioned something earlier about like the time from when you pull a print to when you start to sort of like feel you get to know it, because for different reasons, when you're printmaking, it's a mirror image that comes out of the press, and also it's different from how it looks on the plate. So it's always a surprise, and it can be a surprise in a great way, like Davis was saying, but also a surprise, like, I'm not sure about this. It's like when you get a new pet or something like that, and you're like, I'm not sure about this. And then you start to get to know it, like how more of an objective point of view. So I like that, but it's also a little surprising sometimes when you're like, what is this? And it takes on a character of its own. So yeah.
I see a lot of nodding heads. I've got my other monitor on gallery view, and a lot of nodding heads of that. Yeah, and you're working without a net on the monoprints. We have a lot of print monotype artists here. And even with an etching, I think we'll shortly be, we do have another artist who's who we have like a dark and a light pull from her prints, and the difference, in each piece. And that's one of the charms of printmaking, is the sort of unknown and what's going to happen.
Well, thank you everyone for bearing with me.
Thank you. And it was really nice to see that copper plate. You sort of break down monotypes aside. You kind of break down printmaking into either relief or the intaglio, right, where you're either wiping ink off of the raised surface to print what's deep in a line or a texture, or you're inking a raised surface and printing that. So you're either working, reverse or one way, and they kind of break down from there in a little choose your own adventure.
I think when you talk to
monotype is its own thing.
Yeah, I think when you talk to printmakers, you start to realize why they do the technique that they do. Like, why do you do this technique? And it's whether it's eating into metal to get the ink in there, or whether it's relief, or whether it's strapo, or whatever the technique. It's like the artist is always trying to achieve some kind of final look on that paper. And when you see it in person, then you can kind of get that feel, because why print make? Why not draw or paint or photograph? It's like, well, it is its own different medium, and it's you can see in its history that it's been used for different, it may have been just used to recreate images multiple times, but then in the process of doing that, there was an aesthetic that developed, and people realized, I really like the way this texture is. I really like how the dark ink looks. And I've often thought, well, why do a drawing on, as a monotype like that rather than just a drawing? Because you don't get any more, you only get one. But there's something about the process and the look that is unique to that medium.
Yeah, it's a monotype's a fun one, and there is something, and I think somebody else spoke about when you have been working on something that's very detailed, and then you go to monotype, and it's just like you can do these things that are, I think, yeah, it was you that said that, right? It's a break from the long work, and I'll do encaustic monotype sometimes and they're just fast, because I'm melting wax onto a plate, right, and pulling them off, and it just gets you going because you can't hesitate, you can't overthink it. It's a good warm up. And there is those of us who, I think printmakers maybe are more into the adrenaline, or the ceramics people, right? Because they never know if it's going to explode. So the ceramics people also get points for the adrenaline junkies. So I want to move on to, and if you have questions later, continue. If you do have questions, you can put them in the chat, and Melody can maybe direct them to individual people. I am going to move on to Isabel Deaver. I'm going to start sharing my screen again. Okay, and I corrected Jessica's name while James was talking. So now Jessica's ready. There's a little bit of delay. Is it sharing it? Should be playing. Here we go. Okay. So these are our close-ups of two of the pieces that are in the show that you saw already kind of in process. So Isabel Deaver does etching, which we just sort of learned about, and the chine-colle, which people keep explaining it to me, and I just it's like lasers. I understand it while you're talking, and then the minute you stop, I'm like, what was that? I couldn't go back and do it. So she has a video. It's from an iPhone, so the images are just it's a little fuzzy because I blew it up to be on here. But Jessica or Isabel, do you want to talk before I show the video or during it? It has a strange sort of soundtrack. What is your choice on that?
I would say afterwards.
Okay. It has an interesting sort of tonal soundtrack to it that to me, it really increased the tension. So I'm going to go ahead and start it playing. It's just a minute or two. Ooh. Great views.
Okay.
Do you want to talk over it playing again?
Well, I actually have the plates in front of me. So,
Oh, okay, then I'll stop screen sharing.
yeah.
Okay. And I wrote it down. How to do it. There we go.
Okay. So just to begin this process, I'm going to show you my initial source. You know, I have these beautiful dogs, and when they sleep, they make the most remarkable forms. And I like to photograph them together and, when they're so delightfully relaxed. And in this photograph, you can see that I have, it's really a like kind of a monotone photograph already, where I can begin to identify the lights and darks. So then I did a drawing, and this is the first copper plate. And interestingly, you know, I can make just a single print from that copper plate. This one does have a little bit of the chincolet on the collars. Okay. Then the second plate is this one. And you can see, if I move it back and forth, that the form of the dogs are there. And initially, this plate was completely covered with a ground, 100%, so that when I first test printed it, or I ran a proof, this is what it looked like. The goal was for it to be completely black. And then, interestingly, I took my first plate and made a print of it using a longer piece of paper. And then I pulled the paper up, still trapped on the press, and popped this plate down, and the outline of the dogs was superimposed on my plate. Okay. At which point I began to scrape the image off, and you can see here's another proof as I'm coming along as to how the image is developing. By the way, the tool I used is this scraper, and it takes some finesse to learn how to use it, because if you hold it too sharply, you're actually putting a mark on the plate. And in this instance, I was trying to remove the ground from the plate. Okay. Then, so you all are curious, or Michelle, I know you're curious about the chincolet. To do the chincolet, I had decided that I was going to chincolet these areas, and the dog collar. So to do that, I had to make like a reverse template of them. And because I could not find the right color paper that I wanted, I actually ended up dyeing the paper. And this is the cut paper that I actually put on this plate. And, you know, I have it all cut, prepared, dyed. And then ultimately, you end up with this image. So it's two plates passing through. They have to be, you know, absolutely carefully registered. And one of the things that I sort of love about this I mean, I don't know if you all have noticed that the image also has, like it has a squirrel and a couple of bones and a ball and so forth. You know, that's the substance of Dog Dreams. I named it Sweet Dreams. But to me, also the image looks like the dogs are floating in a pool. So it's like they're floating in a pool, which would be quite something for dogs to be doing. So anyway, that's an explanation of that particular plate. So. Oh,
On the press, you were sprinkling, you put down these papers and then you were sprinkling a powder on the paper?
Yes, that's, it's a wheat paste. And the wheat paste is actually activated by the water. So the fact that the paper is wet, it activates the wheat paste.
Okay. Okay.
So,
And from what I've read about it, it's used often when you want something that's more delicate, then you can get, you know, or use a delicate paper.
right, I used like Kozo paper. So it's very, very fine, thin paper. And quite remarkably, if you look at the print closely, you cannot tell that there's paper chincolate on it. The surface of the print is, you know, it's completely flat and uniform. So you can't really tell that the paper's actually been quote unquote collaged.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it does look inked. And it's a really charming, I mean, if any of people, there's clearly a lot of dog people among our printmakers. There's some great dog prints in here, and you can tell, you know, when a real dog person does a dog print. You know, I sort of translate everything into the metaphor of encaustic, and there's a similar thing in encaustic with an image that's on a very thin piece of, you know, I can draw, you know, do a fine ink drawing or something on a thin tissue, and then when you know, put wax on it, the paper dissolves, and it's okay. all that's left is the image that was on there. So I guess a similar kind of thing where the paper just doesn't dissolve, but it just melds into the other paper.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I love that everybody's video is sort of showing a different piece of the process, because you showed the wetting of the paper, and that again, there's so many little decisions along the way, right? Making sure that it's not too wet and not too dry. There's a lot of Goldilocks going on in printing, and wiping the plates. You know, that was a nice peek into that part. So it is much more complex than many people think. It seems easy.
And one of the interesting things about the chincolate, you actually have to dampen these little pieces of paper. You know, this is like one of the top part of the plate, but you have to dampen them. You spritz them with water, and then you put the wheat paste on, and you have to move really, really quickly, because if things then dry, the paper is going to move around. So, so when you talked about the fact that it felt like there was some tension in that video, there is. We really are moving very quickly to put it all together.
And because because you're doing the thing where you're switching out the plates, you have all those plates inked, pre-inked.
Right.
And there is a window of time, right?
Yes.
When you've got it inked before it's no longer a viable print. So yeah, again, there's so much Goldilocks going on, right? Like the right amount of ink, the right wetness of the paper, there's just so many factors that go into prints, which is why it breaks my heart when people say, oh, it's just a print. Like, oh no, there are so many, there are many, many factors. And, it's a simple process when you explain it you know, on paper. But to actually do it and get each of those parts right, that's the master printmaker part, when you can do all of it. And why I guess so many artists back in the day had their, you know, I know in the traditional Japanese prints, you know, you have your carver and your inker, and you're like, people would specialize, you know, it was like watching surgery, that different people would do different parts of the print. But yeah, we don't have those apprentices anymore. So
No.
you're on your own. But
Not
you
at
did have
all.
help, and those were great shots. That was at Atelier Meridian, right?
Yes.
So
yes, Jane-
great shots of their studio.
Yeah.
I love
Wonderful.
printmaker studios because they're almost always really clean, because they're tidy and they're clean and everything is where it's supposed to be. Tends to be in printmaker studio. They seem to be tidy people. That was wonderful, Isabel. Thank you. And yeah, your prints are really charming. The dogs are still there. And remind me what else you've got in there, because I'm.
Oh, I have 2 dog prints.
You have the treat, right? Are you the treat?
The treat. It's called the treat.
Oh yes, yeah, the black and white dog. Then again, there's a visual tension there of that. You know, if you're a dog lover, you know that moment when you're holding
Right.
the little. Yeah. Okay, let me, do I have
Thank
to go
you.
back to screen sharing again? Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna go back to screen sharing. Kent Kirkpatrick is gonna talk about wood block cutting. So we're gonna go from intaglio methods, which are, you know, things carved into you're carving not carving, but making a positive image, to woodcut, which is where you remove everything except what you want to see. So I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. And he sent a video that will play. Let's see, play. Okay, next. There we go. So this is in the alcove. You might not have seen this if you just walk by the gallery. We've got this in the alcove. And I love that you have this embossing on here as well. And I know your subject matters, Kent, were carefully chosen. So shall we play the video first? And then if you want to talk about it a little bit after that, it's about 5 minutes, I think, on the video.
Hello, my name's Kent Kirkpatrick. I'm a woodblock print artist and an occasional wood sculptor. Today I'm going to show you my process for creating a multicolored woodblock print. Like a lot of art, I start with sketches, and it's a very rough sketch. And then I use Sumi ink and a brush like this. And I essentially make a sketch of a sketch. This is a sketch that I did for a proposal rock on the northern Oregon coast. And you'll notice I can get some of these effects from this brush that I couldn't get otherwise. So after I have the black and white image, rough black and white image worked out, then I further work on the color and the whole design of the whole thing. So then the next step from that is I have to transfer to a wood block, and like this. And
Hi. Did anybody hear anything?
No.
Oh, well, I want to tie into the last artist and show off my dog anyway. And so basically I just went through a process of showing that, you know, a lot of my work is, I use the Chinese brushes and create some interesting, what I consider interesting effects with that. And then I bring it into woodblock. And I had worked in Mokuhanga, the Japanese woodblock printing, some years ago, and I gave up printmaking for about 10 years. Got back into it, and I decided to go more Western, but I still use the registration marks are called Kento cuts or Kento marks. So I still use those to keep my colors registered. And then, and some prints I incorporate embossing with them. On this one that I have showing at the gallery is one of them, and I'm trying to emphasize threatened species in the particular area where I'm making the print subject matter of. And I thought, well, how am I going to do that? And by using the paper itself, I felt like it wouldn't draw away too much, because all you're seeing is the whiteness of the paper, and then there's the color of the print. So I thought that was a nice combination. So there's both a kind of a relief sculpture kind of thing going on, and a printmaking thing going on. And my head's always like one print ahead of what I'm doing now. And so I'd like to incorporate, maybe some embossing, such as a cloud kind of thing with the color, and that would be embossed in the whiteness of the paper, and then a mountain or something coming through that, or a river or something like that. And then the other thing in the printmaking is I use the blending colors, gradating colors, and the Japanese term for that is bokashi, excuse me. And that's just a blend of it, and then using your brayers and taking all the colors and then working them, so you have this nice, beautiful gradated colors. I'm sorry that we didn't have any sound there. But,
I'm hoping that there's sound. So I was able to hear sound, and when I was making the slideshow, obviously, I was able to hear it. I can hear it today on the video. So I am hoping that the recording is picking up what I've got rather than everybody else. So, and thank you for people who texted me and put in the chat that there was no sound. This is the first time we've embedded a video into a PowerPoint. In the past, we did things where we, handed it off to someone else to run their own video. So again, we're still learning, even after all these months, how to do a Zoom presentation, but we will solve that problem for next time. I love some research. And I am hoping that it'll at least be in the recording, because your explanations are great. One question I had is, you explain, and for people, if you ever did potato prints, it's basically the same concept, right? It's a relief print where the red areas hold the ink. So it's like a stamp pad. It's the same physics as a stamp pad. You're putting ink on the block instead of putting the block on the ink. Are you doing a reduction print where you continue to carve away on the same block, or are you making a separate block for each color?
It would be like D, all of the above. I started out doing one block, essentially one color kind of thing, and then now most of them are reduction blocks.
Yeah, and so reduction, if you sort of think about, if you use a different block for each color, it's more work in terms of carving the blocks and getting the registration. But then if you do reduction, it's, you really need to think ahead of time on what's getting covered and what's not, because you're continuing to carve away more and more area on the same block. So you're printing smaller and smaller things. And I guess on the one we're looking at here, the Sandy Island, I would think the large green area was printed in a light color, and then you would carve away to have only those dark colors to print the next time. Is that right?
Pretty much right, yeah, spot on.
There's a lot of backwards thinking in it. I think maybe people who do watercolor are good at this because they have to work backwards too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and once you've carved something away, it can't go back. And once an edition is done, you can never go back and print them again. If you're printing plates for each color, you can always go back, even though they've broken down, they're not as sharp. But yeah, the block is destroyed by the time you're done.
Yeah, I mean, there is something, if you're using like a black line or something called, you would call it a key block, and you could keep that, and then you could always do another
Yeah.
edition, with
Yeah, but those
one broken,
reductions
it's
are
carved out.
valuable.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry about your video. If the sound doesn't come through on the recording, what I'll do then is just post your video as like a separate video. It's just sort of an adjunct video that people can watch. Because people send me videos in all different forms and different files. So there was a lot of file exchanging going on. And again, I take full credit for all the technical stuff, because had I been able to give full attention to this, I could have headed off a lot of things earlier. And now I know to practice it as a viewer, not just as the host. So anything, we can move on from Kent to serigraphy, for some reason, serigraph is really easy to say, but serigraphy sounds weird. So David Kessler is our only serigrapher. And I think let me go to I have a page that your sort of intro page, but then you're just going to hold things up and show stuff, right?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, you might turn your volume up a tiny bit. You're a little low, or get closer to your microphone.
Volume up. That's not good. I'll just have to, I'll haul.
There you go.
Okay.
You're loud enough to get the view. Okay.
Okay, so am I on full screen?
Mhm.
That's, okay, that's scary. I have a piece like this that's in the show. This is one of the pieces that's in the show. So in serigraphy is screen printing, basically. So, which is a stencil process as opposed to every other kind of printing. And it was, I don't know, it's been around for 1,000 years, started in China and Japan, and it really got going in the West here for advertising posters in the 20th century. And probably the most famous screen printers are like Andy Warhol and Sister Corita Kent from the 60s and 70s. And at any rate, that's a really brief history. Here, I'll hold up my sketchbook. This is where you have to be committed to your images pretty early on in the process. So these are 9 little drawings, and they transferred. This is going to be interesting to see if this works. Anyway, I put them in Photoshop, and I squared them all away. And so these are the 9 images. I wanted to do a really tight series of work. So these are 9 really abstract images. And in Photoshop, then I worked them in Photoshop. And because it's a positive to positive format, you know what the image is supposed to look like, because what you draw is then ends up what you print. So you don't have to get, it's not like a new pet. It's like an old pet that you know what it's going to look like. So Anyway, so let's see. This is a screen, and it's the screen that has those. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can. It has a photo sensitive coating, and you expose it to light, and then after you expose it to light, you wash out the image area from the screen, and then you attach the screen to hinges, and you pull the ink over the screen with a squeegee. It's very fun. And then you end up with, here's the finished print of those 9 pieces all in one. It's sort of the key for the series. And here's one of the other final ones in that series, just totally black and white. One screen does all the black and white, one screen per color, I should say. And here's another print from this. This is a 4-color print. So you need 4 screens to do this print, one at a time. And so that's basically it. So you print like a yellow, red, purple, and black on top of that. I hope everyone can hear me. Oh, good. I like that. So that's basically it. Quick, and you have to be committed right from the start to your image, basically. And you have to be very careful and very neat, because screen printing can get really messy, really fast, and then you've got to wash everything out and start over again. So anyway, that's my
Wonderful. Thank you. That's a great explanation. And I think Andy Warhol, I think, sort of brought serigraphy into the public eye, and sort of, I think him and Sister Carita sort of legitimized it,
Yeah,
it had been used for advertising, so there's always that,
right.
It's not art.
Art form, but it's also an
Yeah.
art form that almost everyone owns a screen print, because, for instance, that is my T-shirt. That's a screen print, and who doesn't own a T-shirt that's been screen printed?
I had that in my notes as you were talking. I was going to say, if you've seen the T-shirt shops or those machines that,
Right.
it's a screen print. It's a stencil. If you've used a stencil, it's basically the same thing. So you use the photo emulsion process, and then I remember in school, we also would do a process where we're reversing it, though, painting the negative of painting on the screen with shellac. And then running it through, but then it's negative that way, right? Because the shellac is blocking out. So it's a nice exercise in negative space, and good for abstract stuff. But again, washing that shellac out of the screens.
Yeah.
It's a really fun printmaking. And the Carita Kent and Andy Warhol were both at Portland Art Museum together. I remember last year with the Schnitzer's collection of Andy Warhol, and then Carita Kent downstairs. And they were both great shows. And I think there are still some videos and stuff available through the Portland website. Sister Carita, most people know that poster that said that it was like a little tree and it said "Make love, not war."
Right.
That was Sister Carita, and yeah, she was a nun who was an activist, and she did end up leaving the order, but because of some of the controversial things that she did.
She was a friend of Andy Warhol's also, and
yes, yeah.
And
It was amazing. Yeah, it was sort of the East Coast, West Coast thing, right? Andy's so
Right.
New York, and she was West Coast, and I think the two of them really, kind of opened that up as a true art medium, and not just an advertising medium, as people have done for photography too. Thank you. And so we've got these little squares, the ones that are behind David. Those are the ones that are in the show.
These are,
And
yeah.
again, any of you who haven't sent us business cards or want to drop off business cards, because talk to printmakers and they've probably got some more things at home. And so as much as we love to sell from the gallery, if just getting people in there and exposing people to those artists, that's good too.
And
So
actually,
you know.
the things that are behind me are all paintings.
those are paintings, but then you did the screen prints, because some of those are the same images
Some
of the
them
screen
are
print.
quite similar to the screen prints, but the
Mm-hmm.
paintings took too long to paint. I love them, but they were just too tedious. And the screen
Mhm.
print process is much more economical in the sense you can get from the idea to the finished product. There are a lot of steps, but you can do it more quickly.
And they're really fun. They're really fun prints. And did you do cutting that film also? That
I never
film,
did.
and then you dissolve the film onto the screen. I remember doing that. It was
I
nasty.
came late to screen printing, so
Ah.
or serigraphy.
Yes, yeah. It's the fancy word. It's sort of like the what's the thing that we wouldn't accept, the giclée prints that are actually just inkjet. That it's giclée is just French for spit. So those are actually inkjet prints, but they sound really arty when they're giclée. So yeah, we did not accept digital work, so everything is hand pulled in our show. We are going to go on to Poppy Dully, right? Is it Dully or Dooley? Dully.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi there.
Okay. So I'm going to start screen sharing again, and she's going to talk over her. She has a very short little video and mostly still images. And if you've been by the gallery, you have seen the books. It's the folded out books. Let me start playing this. There we go. So this was, David made this wonderful, with all good intentions, I think you were going to do the whole thing as screen prints. This is really cute. I love the graphic quality on your work. It's really cheerful. And here is Poppy. So you might have seen these books accordioned out in the window. And she uses monotype. I added collage in there because you are kind of collaging those onto the books. So I'm going to skip forward. We have Babette's Feast and The Hunchback of Notre Dame in the gallery. So let me go on to the beginning part of this. There we go. That's where you start. So you'll be going into more detail on monotype, right?
A little bit, yes. This is a print from the most recent book that I just finished, Woman in the Moon or Rocket to the Moon. And I'll show you the finished print when I get back on screen. And this is what a plate looks like that's ready to go. I've been working on it on a light screen and light table, and it's ready to go onto the press. And you'll see a very short video of it being printed on the book pages. So just to explain it, I find an image that I want to use. I draw onto the plate with a Sharpie pen. I ink up the entire plate and I wipe off all the ink that I don't want to have there, and I want the text to come through. And what remains is what will be printed. The ink that remains is what will be printed. And a piece of the 2 pages of the book are placed on top of the plate on the press and then run through the press. So we can show I don't know if you have the video next, but we can look at that. So that's the print that's been, the prints that have been made for that page. Then when all of those prints dry for the book, I assemble them into a book form using the original book covers. If I have it or not, I make my own book covers. And that shows you 6 of the prints. That's actually 6 times 2 because I'm making 2 books of 14 monotypes I made for that particular book. So they're drying right now. I will tell you just a tiny bit about that book, because the books are the reason why I picked the books are interesting. That particular book, Rocket to the Moon, was written by Theo van Harbo, who was the wife of Fritz Lang, who turned it into a film in 1929. So it is a silent film with titles that go between the pictures. And it is a marvelous, wonderful film in black and white, of course. Okay, this one is The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and it's in the gallery right now. There are 16 monotypes of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I became interested in it when the fire almost destroyed the cathedral, and wanted to look again at that book, which Victor Hugo wrote in 1830. It takes place in 15th century Paris, and it was made into a film in 1939. The King of Fools, Quasimodo, is the main character here, shown in a monotype, and he's played by Charles Laughton. Esmeralda, the female main character, is Maureen O'Hara, and it's a beautiful tale. All of the filming was done in a studio, so all the scenes were created by hand. And when it was published in 1830 in Paris, it began the historic preservation movement in France, because a lot of it talks about the beauty of the cathedral. The next slide. That's another picture of Quasimodo sitting on a balcony with a gargoyle at the cathedral. Now, so there are 16 monotypes in this book. The next one. This is from Babette's Feast, and Babette's Feast is a short story written by Karen Blixen, who went by the name Isaac Dennison as her pseudonym, nom de plume. And it was written in 1950 as a short story and serialized in the Ladies' Home Journal. It was then published in a collection called which is now is the book that's in the gallery. And it was filmed in 1987, directed by Gabrielle Axel, and was starring a French actress who was very famous, Stephanie Audrain. And it's beautifully filmed, a wonderfully sweet story. The director talks about being influenced by Vermeer. And if you look at the film, you'll see the earth tone colors in the film. And Karl Lagerfeld designed the costuming, and it's lush with the food that is created. And it's a wonderful film. And it brought together many very famous Danish actors who, if you know Carl Dreyer's work, they were very, they performed in his films. And there are 13 monotypes in this particular book. And when I stopped to think about what do these books have in common, which one takes place in outer space, one takes place in 15th century Paris, one takes place in 19th century Denmark. The common thread for all of this is that love conquers all, because they all have love as a theme throughout the books. And I never really stopped and thought about that until I was putting this little talk together, thinking about what it is. So I don't know if that's the theme for many of my books, but anyway, that's just sort of something to think about. I wanted to show you if I can be shown on the screen. I just wanted to show you what the finished book looks like of the first one we talked about. Okay, this is Rocket to the Moon or Women in the Moon. Rocket to the Moon is the book. Women in the Moon is the title of the film. I haven't decided what this book is going to be, which one this book is going to be called. So this, I had to make a cover for this book because I couldn't use the original cover. And the book that the prints that you saw coming off the press have been put into this book form. So there's a picture of that print in its book, placed in the book. So I want-
And that's nice. I thank you for flipping through those. Because the nice thing about these is, you know, you could put them out accordion style on a shelf and see all of it, or you can keep it all folded up as a little secret on your bookshelf.
Yeah,
Or, you know, and they're viewable from both sides, which is a great thing about having them in the window. You can see them from inside and outside. They don't have a back and front. They're just beautiful.
They're just, and thank you for displaying them so nicely. But you could put them in a book stand. You can put them in a book stand and just show this, and you could turn it, you know, as you want to. So you have a changeable art form. And it's also in a book. You can look at it like this, where it's just you and the artwork. So there's many ways of appreciating the work. And thank you so much, Michelle.
Yeah, they really are nice, and thank you for participating too. And I'm glad that you sort of found a new way into them by you know, working through the talk, and that's a good thing to hear. Because I know a lot of times artists are a little, you know, most of us like to just hide away in our little hidey place and do our thing, and it is sometimes hard to come out and, you know, talk about your art, but making you do that sort of makes you you know, find connections that you might not have found, and that's nice. So stuff is going on in there. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank
Thank you
you.
very
So we're going to go next to Megan. I'm going to go back to I have Megan Arntzen, who, Megan, do you want to show things? Do you want to just go ahead and continue like this, or just speak?
If you want to pin my screen, I do kind of have some stuff in front of me, so I can kind of be showing parts of it, or
Okay, yes, as long as you're talking, then
yeah,
we'll see you. And if you want to hold things up, because the only thing that I have on your screen is just your ferns,
Yeah.
the ferns that we have in the gallery.
yeah. Okay, yeah, so Megan Arntzen, and I am a relief printmaker, you know, similar like woodcuts, lino blocks, all that. I kind of come from a slightly different kind of approach to it, in the fact that I do letterpress printing as well, which is basically just another subset of relief printing. But if you want to like thinking about it in terms of like how newspapers used to be printed, you know, with the metal type and all that. And actually, I don't have like a bunch of just, it's, you know, not movable around, but I do have kind of just, this is something I just recently got, but these are, it's called, they're alpha blocks, and basically they're these movable pieces of kind of these shapes. I haven't gotten to play with them yet, but it's kind of been, you know, so I also, as you can kind of like, these prints behind me are not mine, but I incorporate a lot of text and verbiage and stuff like that. So you know, it kind of all blends together for me. I studied as a graphic designer, so I have a strong interest in typography, but even when I was doing that, I had a very like, I was more pulled towards maybe the kind of more illustrative and imagery side than necessarily the straight up design work. So actually I do have, well, do you reach it? So, you know, here's actually one of my burn or copy of the print that is framed in the show. So I have like the blocks that I actually carved for it here, and I did multi-blocks, so each color was its own separately carved block. And let's see, so I started with actually a solid block, just of a pale yellow to kind of help tie in the color on that fern print, because that was really what really drove me or interested me in that image, because it's a little bit of a step away from some of the other stuff I've been doing, but I bounce around all the time on my imagery. But so I started with that, and then this is, I'm trying to, hopefully you can see kind of the detail on that. This was like the lightest kind of color there. So basically I kind of then progressively, here's next kind of sequence in that, as far as the next level of green. And then this ended up being the dark green on there that kind of was over that. So then just kind of as a quick walkthrough of my process, I don't really have a bunch of great kind of in-process stuff for that. But one I'm working on right now, it's actually basically a good friend of mine. I just, as a gift for her, I'm doing this little portrait of her dog. So kind of the fern was started from a photo that I had in my backyard. And it was just something about the texture and the color of it. So I kind of pulled it into Photoshop, kind of blew it up, and then was playing with different parts of it. But normally I do start from drawings or sketchbooks. So like this was this one sheet. So this was kind of like the rough sketch I did. I kind of did kind of played with a couple different angles and photos off of that. Just trying to kind of capture, this image. And so then I pull my imagery into Photoshop and kind of refined it a little bit, because I kind of have a mix of both analog and digital in my process. I primarily love the tactical, like hands-on aspect of printmaking, but I also become, very comfortable with digital tools. And like Photoshop gives me really a good option to kind of work the imagery a little bit and play with kind of bringing out some of the darks and the lights in the different areas and kind of reversing that image. So, but I wasn't quite happy with that first image. So then I kind of went back after I worked it in Photoshop. And so then this kind of went like kind of a second drawing, kind of to refine some of the details on some of the areas where I wasn't really quite happy with it at first. And then actually I can screen share. I do have a little progress video of me carving the block. So here is the block. It's hard to see because I kind of removed that backing on it, but let me screen share and I can kind of show you my process in carving that. So let's see, there we go. Oh, hold on, there's not sound on it, so I'll kind of just talk over it. And it also it features my cat as he was helping me on this. So I mean, it's just a really quick time lapse. I couldn't do the whole thing just because it was too long for that, but just kind of to show how I kind of approach carving. I just really love the relief process. It's kind of, I find it kind of is a really interesting way to, take my drawings. I usually try and get it really close to the final image before I transfer it to the lino block. But I still find that there's kind of an element of translation because I kind of know, okay, when I'm drawing this, that mark making, and then I guess that mark making is close, but once I actually go and physically carve the block, it'll change a little bit of the weight and the lines and stuff. So I love kind of that, the kind of iterations it goes through to kind of create that final process. I don't actually have I haven't printed that one yet. Haven't quite found the time, but kind of as basically it's kind of a similar process for the fern print in there. So yeah, I think that's kind of a quick recap of it. So yeah.
Thank you. Any questions? And I know you held up that print, and I will tell you the greens, and I've got it on your your page of the PowerPoint, those greens and yellows are so vivid, and it's a nice kind of offset to the to all the black and whites, you know, to have these just pure popping colors. It's like swimming through ferns, you know, and especially now with early spring, you know, and you have those little green ones and you know, the little new babies, little new baby ferns, and it's like if you were a bird just, you know, working your way through
Yeah.
the ferns. But yeah, and thank you about the letterpress. That's interesting, and it is that kind of missing link with movable type. You know, it kind of opened everything up, and I know it's popular now. And I think isn't there a studio somewhere in Portland that
Well,
has letterpress that people can use?
Yes. I mean, there's actually, I mean, yes, there's been a huge revival and interest in letterpress. I think people just like what really people love about letterpress. Typically, I would say like they're like wedding invitations or whatever, but you get that deboss effect on the type. And, you know, when you're handling the paper, you can like feel it. And, you know, that's definitely something that there's a lot of different letterpress printers here in Portland, various commercial studios who will do like, you know, and it's kind of also an interesting mix because you have printers who are more geared towards commercial work. And I mean, there's still very much a, you know, high level of craft involved in it, but it's a little bit, you know, less, it's getting more into production versus say fine art printing. But there's kind of a range of people who overlap kind of all that. But so there's multiple shops, but the one that there is actually a open community, well, it's membership based, but they really focus on accessibility and kind of making stuff available to anyone who is interested. DRC, which I got this poster right here. I've actually been a volunteer there for about 7 years now. It's kind of different now with pandemic stuff, but basically they have open print hours for their letterpress studio, and so I've been a open hour supervisor. So if people come in and, you know, one, they can learn how to print letterpress printing at there, but then they can come in to work on their projects. And again, not right now, just because they have very, very limited availability because they're trying to limit the number of people in the studio. But in normal times, I would be there and I like you're having trouble printing or troubleshooting, like, hey, this press is not printing on this side. What's going on here? And I can try and help people kind of work through that. So it's something I
Next year's print show.
yes, I
We'll be able to do that.
back in there.
I have operated a letterpress once as part of a demo at Pittock Mansion because, you know, the newspaper and all that stuff. And so they had this live demo going, and man, what a machine. That is so weird. I mean, there's like a circle on it that you do something with.
Yeah, well, there's a few different kinds of letterpress. I mean, kind of various applications. So that would have been like a platen press. And
Yes.
that circle is this big flat circle, and that basically, that's your ink disc. So instead of like in kind of the more manual sense, like you have a slab of glass and you have a brayer and you roll that out, basically what happens is you put your ink up on that ink disc, and then there's rollers, and those rollers kind of go back and forth, and they pick up the ink and act as, in that case, as the brayer. But there's a wide variety. There's also like tabletop presses, which are very, I mean, again, there's various levels of some that are more geared towards commercial settings where they're way more about volume, or there are really pretty basic ones that are essentially like an etching press, but with more of a basic, like type high is well, in the States, but it's different in Europe, but type high is 0.918 of an inch. So basically you want it to all be like mounted and raised to that level. So I'm kind of very much smaller, like amounts of height. So it's you know.
Yeah, it's really what goes back to the original typesetting, you know,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the first movable type and so many of the words that we still use now in our, you know, when we're doing a document in whatever, you know, we call it leading because there was a strip of lead there in the
Yes.
uppercase and lowercase.
Yes.
This, you know, why those letters are called what they are, you know, because
Well,
it's where they
even
were
there's
stored.
so many idioms that come from that, like, you know, being out of sorts would mean that, you know, you're trying to set a bunch of text and oh,
Yeah.
you know, you ran out of e's, your sort of e's is out, so you're out of sorts. Or
Yeah.
mind your p's and q's, because again it's reversed, so p's look like q's and d's look like b's. And just
being a typesetter was really, you know, nowadays we still call them typesetters, right? The people who are working pre-press, but being a typesetter, you know, you have to be fast because you're setting up one page and printing it, and then you have to set up the whole next page letter by letter, and you're doing it backwards. So, you know, when you think about, you know, God forgive the old newspapers that are printed that way for having typos in them, because,
oh
you know,
yeah, I mean,
being a fast and accurate typesetter, you are a very valuable skill, and hopefully you could learn pre-press. There is also a place I know of, and I think they still do this, Oblation, the pen and stationery store that's down near Blick.
Yes, yes.
They have some letterpress stuff there, and they'll do custom work if you don't want to learn how to do it yourself and do it. But,
Oh yeah, no,
and I know
I
there's probably
had
other
a friend
places
who
in
worked
town.
at Oblation for a few years before she moved out of state. But yeah, they're great. And I mean, there's honestly, I could probably like, there's so many different shops here in Portland that I couldn't list them all, but I'm just trying to, like, I feel bad.
That's the, you order business cards from a regular place, and one of the things you pay premium for is they'll fake emboss them so that it's like it was on a letterpress,
Yeah.
because that's, you know, showing that you have really nice cards. So thanks, a little diversion from regular art printmaking, but it's nice that you have incorporated those things together. Let's go back to screen sharing. We just have 3 or 4 more people here. Back to screen sharing. And so yeah, I went out of order. So let me just real quick, I'm going to go forward to show Megan's print. This is the fern print that is in the gallery, and it is just so bright and beautiful. I want it, you know, all over my walls. I'm going to put it in the window instead of looking out at the fog right now. So, and then I'll back up to, is it Ike? Is that your?
Yes, it's Ike. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. Do you want to just talk over this, or do you have things to show live?
No, I'll talk over this.
Okay. This is big. This is a poster size. This is huge.
Let's see. Yeah, this is 34 by 26 and I have a video on my website if anybody is after this wants to check it out, www.enkart.net. For many years, I was a member of Inkling Studio, and I split my time between a private practice as a therapist and doing prints at Inkling, a wonderful printmaking studio for many years. And there I did mostly subtractive linoleum cuts on a large French tool press. I would take battleship linoleum, glue it to a board, draw the image in reverse, and begin with the lightest color with a big roller. And I start with yellow usually. Wherever I wanted to stay yellow, I would cut away and keep adding other colors to the addition. And one of the things about the subtractive linoleum cut is you have no way of knowing what it's going to look like until that final pull through the press. And when you hold your breath and lift it up and you hope that it's registered and it works. I was thinking as everyone is describing their process that someone who doesn't do prints might think, why would anybody do this? But it's exciting when it works. So in this, I did some repurposing. I don't know if the whole print can be seen. I only see a small part of it on my screen. Michelle, can the whole thing?
It should be showing the whole thing.
Okay,
it
maybe.
is- You might have a small screen on there. Are you looking on a phone? Are you on a phone?
No, I'm looking on my laptop, but only about half of the image shows. But maybe,
I have it widescreen. That might be it.
oh, maybe you can see it. Okay.
I could see it.
Oh,
I
good.
could see the whole thing.
Okay, I've seen it before, so more important that you can see it. So let's see, so I worked, and at Inkling Studio, we shared there was a wide range of litho inks, just really rich, wonderful colors. And then as the studio closed, sadly, the inks were put away, and I then went to just black and white prints, and I repurposed some. I cut up some old subtractive linoleum cuts and collaged them onto the black and white print. So some of these are from the subtractable linoleum cuts, all the color, and some from decorative papers. So it's a combination of those things repurposed and put onto the black and white print. Even without intending to, the art that I do always seems to reflect something going on in my life. And in this case, I'm not a birder. My husband is a birder, and he's been to some far off places and would send me images. And this one actually is from a trip he took to Assam, India. And I only once went on a birding trip with him, and it was in Washington, nothing exotic. And I think as a psychotherapist for many years, I found myself observing the birders more than the birds. And so this sort of reflects that I was fascinated by all these people studying the birds. Let's see, what can I say? And the other prints that are not up here, but that are in the gallery are also tell a story about things that that go on in my life. There's one called Road Trip, which is also which is a linoleum cut done in the same way with the repurposed colorful prints. And that's about a very long, entirely too long road trip that we once took. There's a black and white print with some collage on it in the gallery, a small piece. It's called Ever Feel This Way? And that's inspired by a 5-year-old grandson having a tantrum. So there's material everywhere. So I think that's, I'll just add one more thing. These prints are part of an edition, but each time I repurpose, each time I put part of an old print onto the black and white print, it changes something in the edition. So I wondered one day, I thought, well, this is all part of an edition, but each one is slightly different. So can I still call it part of an edition? And Eric Sandgren said, you just call it a unique print. So it's still part of an edition, but each one is slightly different. So that's my story.
I like that. So it's sort of a hybrid, and how you can kind of break the rules too. And yeah, this is really pretty. It is big. It's, it's a major piece. And I love the cutouts on it. And I love the repurposing of other prints too. It's
Thank
nice. There was something I was going to ask you. I was thinking while you were talking, and now I have forgotten it. Darn. It'll come back to me. I'm sorry, I completely forgot my question, but if anybody else has a question, you can put it into the chat. Yeah, I love the idea of observing the observers. And I think we talked about in the Tuesday preview that the little birds at the top are a little bit, they're tessellated, you know, almost like the Escher reverse birds. Oh, I know what I was going to say. If you come by the gallery, Ike was nice enough to bring us the piece of linoleum, and she called it Battleship linoleum, and that means that it's gray. It's the Battleship gray. If you go to the art store, and they have different linoleums, and some are hard and soft and various textures, and it is called Battleship because it is that perfect, you know, 50% Battleship gray, and it holds a nice line. But that sheet is there at the gallery. If the gallery is still online, it's way in the way back. And you know, if somebody wants to see that when you come in, or we could, you know, keep it out there because it's impressive to see that great big piece. That's a lot of linoleum to handle, and ink and everything.
I think I thought it might be helpful, particularly for people who've not done prints at all, that it involves thinking backwards and cutting away what you don't want, leaving what you do want.
It's hard. Yeah, if you haven't done it, it's surprisingly hard to get your, you know, it's one of those things that I think is better done than explained. It's very hard to get your head around. I remember trying to explain to people about screen printing. I was a docent at the museum and explaining to people about screen printing when the Warhol show was there. And, you know, it's hard to explain. They're hard processes to explain.
Give it a try. Yeah.
Yeah, but then once you see it happen, it's like, oh yeah, obviously that's how that works.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And we're gonna go to Marina Claire, I think is who should show up next. Yes. And these are etchings, and then there's the one that also has the Chincolet on it. The framed one has Chincolet, but you have editions. You have quite a few from your edition there, but each one is so different. I kind of had trouble putting them. I put them for sale online, and I just listed them as dark pull and light pull, and kind of, you know, everyone is going to be different. People seem to be preferring the dark pull in terms of purchasing.
Interesting.
But
okay.
I think, did you want to do screen share or just talk over these?
Unfortunately, I was planning on doing a screen share, but unfortunately, due to time constraints, I had no idea it was going to go this long. I share my studio with my partner, and he had a client at 1:30, so I had to leave. And I'm at my sister's now and have no work to show you guys, but I'll just talk about these pieces briefly.
Follow her on Instagram.
Yeah, here, I'll post my Instagram in the chat. Because, and yeah, right now that is probably the best place to get a look at my stuff. Yeah, so talking about like printmaking and medium specificity of printmaking, and you know, I really like what you said at the onset, Michelle, about that there is a distinction between reproductions and prints, and I like towing that line in printmaking. I had a lot of like professors in college that didn't like it because they thought I wasn't, you know, doing with the consistency of each wipe. They didn't, you know, when you're learning printmaking, they want it to be exactly the same and such. And yes, that's of course the original intention of printmaking. But now that we have the ability to make, you know, digital reproductions of stuff, the importance of it being, each pull being identical is shifted now in this time. And so I'm really interested in like bringing a hand done quality to printmaking in particular, but especially from print to print. The fact that I'm not a computer and I'm not making these mechanical reproductions. I mean, I am making these mechanical reproductions rather. And so, yeah, I hope that wasn't too annoying on your end, on the gallery's end for...
I love them, and we're just calling them light and dark and saying, you know, it might not be exactly what you see here, and no one's brought them back. So I think we're happy so far.
That works for me. That works for me. Yeah. And yeah, and I think that the frame piece sold, right?
I have it. It's mine.
Oh, nice. Okay, I was wondering.
I bought it before we opened. I just got yeah, you know, I love what you're saying about the technical. There is, and it is beautiful to see that technical ability of being able to make, you know, these identical prints, and there is an amazing appreciation of the technical ability. And I think that's kind of analogous to what happened to painting once we had photography, right? When what was valued in painting was making that, you know, the best thing you could say about a painting was, I thought it was real. You know, I thought those were actual fruits or an actual person. That was the highest compliment you could give a painting. But once a photograph can do that, it frees the painter from that judgment constraint to be able to put something interpretive in it. And, you know, I think art's a lot like philosophy, right? Where it's this dialogue through the ages. And so, you know, once we can make the perfect digital reproduction with 4-color process, you know, that, you know, every single one's going to be the same. It's still the same physics, right? It's still all about water and oil and all that stuff, but there's the sameness, so that it frees up, and it still is admirable, you know, like I really still admire the photorealistic painters, if that's what you want to do, right? But it's a choice. You get to make the choice of doing it that way. And, you know, some of the etchings that we have in here, I'm looking at, you know, James Wilson's are just, you know, they're beautiful, but they're also amazing for their the technical ability to do that. But yeah, this gives you another choice. And
Absolutely.
each one is a little painting on its own.
That's right.
In wiping. Yeah, so, well, we saw on several of the little videos when, you know, the ink is all over and then you saw people wiping the ink, there was the towel, somebody put a towel on top of one, and then there's nothing like there's some things that just, you know, some of us don't wear gloves because there's nothing like, you know, the warmth of your hand for smoothing stuff. And it really is the mark of a hand and the different ways to wipe ink. So you can see, I guess, well, you can explain how you get a dark and a light pull on these.
It's accidents and experimentation.
That's how much ink you wipe.
Yeah. How much ink? I feel like what the tarlatan cloth looks like, depending on which bin I grabbed it from and which one I'm using that day.
So tarlatan, for folks that don't know, is like a very stiff gauze, kind of. It's a thin fabric like a gauze, but it's very stiff, like it's got starch.
Yeah,
and
like
that's
a
what
starch cheesecloth that you bundle it up into a ball and try to make it like flat enough such that the pressure is even, that you're able to apply as much even pressure as possible with your hand, which I don't know if it would be more difficult or easier with a smaller plate, but you know, this is just about 3 by 5, so it's a small, should be easy in theory to get a uniform kind of wipe with one single pass, but that is not always the case. And yeah, there's just so many different variables involved. Some of them I experimented with, like various degrees of buffing afterwards and using like a piece of soft paper to buff around the non-inked areas. And yeah, so what's kind of exemplified is a lot of experimentation in that process.
Yeah, it is. And some of these are very dark, and they're so completely different. Just these chairs, you know, and if you can take just a quick minute to tell us the story, the origin story of these chairs.
Sure, yeah. I mean,
it lends a whole different mood to the narrative.
Yeah. I mean, like, just like you were saying, you know, like there's a lot of philosophy in art. I studied both, and at my university, you know, in philosophy class, especially in ancient Greek philosophy, which is where I sourced the title for this piece, we're talking about the basics of the universe, like how things got to be. A lot of Socratic and Platonic philosophy is concerned with like ideal forms and things that don't actually exist in the world, but they exist as ideas only. We're talking a lot about very abstract things in the classroom. I find that the professor, for examples of things, we would always talk about just things that were in the classroom. So it was a lot of like chairs and coffee cups, and pencils or whatever, you know, like these are objects that we would talk about a lot to make abstract concepts concrete. So whatever, we talked a lot about chairs in philosophy class. And then, you know, just being bored in classes and stuff, decided to make a little tribute print to all of the chairs in the university. And I'm sure all of us at some point can recognize that one of these designs that we've sat in. And so, yeah, so those are the 3 different chairs at the school that I went to. And
those are sort of the platonic ideal of the chairs, right? Like that stool is the stool, right? And
Yeah.
that chair, you know, those stacking chairs, and then the desk, the writing chair, they are very much sort of platonic ideals of chairs.
right, they
and stools.
represent the idea and not the particular that you've sat in, but we all have that shared experience of these chair designs or whatever. Well put.
Yeah, it's charming, and it's been popular. And one of the things that appealed to me about it, and I don't know that anyone else saw this, but one of my favorite pieces of art in the world is Marcel Duchamp's the Bride and Bachelor's piece, the big window piece that is installed in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
I made a pilgrimage from Virginia to Philadelphia to see that piece, and it's amazing. And there's something about this that reminds me of part of the chocolate grinder or something. There's something about this that reminds me of that. And that's what made me fall in love with it. And then when you talked about the aspect of the philosophy, and I liked it because I often use philosophy as the sort of analogy, right, for artists responding to each other, how each art movement responds to the previous one. So I love the blending of art and philosophy that you've done here.
Thank you.
Very nice. Yeah, I enjoy your prints and would love to see more.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you to you and Side Street Gallery for putting this all together, and all of the hard work and late nights for you too, and also for all the
timestamp on that email I sent.
yeah, what time? Saw that timestamp. And thank you. I feel like I've learned so much today. Thank you all the fellow artists for the education today. It's been amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it has really, we're way over time here, but I don't know what I would have cut out. So we still have, most of us are still here, only a few people have left. And, you know, hopefully you can come back, and it will be posted online as soon as Zoom serves it to me. So I'm going to go next to Chelsea Hockey. Chelsea sent me a Google version of PowerPoint. And so when I had to, in order to use it, I hate Google stuff, in order to extract it from Google and bring it in, there was a sharing permission issue on the video. You had embedded a little video in there of you mixing and printing, and when I tried to play it, it said, you don't have permission for this video. And of course it was, 12:30 last night. I didn't think you would wake up and give me. I think I sent you a permission request just in case you were up, but everything else shows. So this is the print that is framed, the ginkgo, and several people talked about the technique of putting the different color inks on different, poor Kirk Kent, who was muted, talked about rolling the different colors with the different brayers on there. So you can go ahead and get started. I'll go to your first. Oh, the other thing is that there was a font issue and a aspect ratio. So you had a darling font on there, but I replaced it with
I think if I just share my screen, everything should show up just
perfect.
fine.
Okay.
So I'll just do that.
Yeah, let's do that. And hopefully the video will pick up your video too. So, and even sound. So yeah, go ahead and do your screen sharing.
Okay. So let's see. All right. Cute. Can everybody see my Google slide on there? All right. So hello, I'm Chelsea. Thanks for sticking it out to the end, everybody. And I make linoleum block prints. So a relief printing. A lot of my inspiration comes from the natural world. I'm always taking pictures of things. Anything that inspires my creative mind, I'm snapping pictures of or sketching. Once in a while, I'll take, plant pressings. You can see some ferns that I pressed and arranged into a frame right here, and that directly influenced that fern print on the right. I like to have a really good, a strong visual so that my interpretation of a plant is as botanically accurate as I can make it. So next steps are sketching, just to get ideas down and come up with usually a simplified version of a drawing that'll translate nicely onto a linoleum block. And I transfer this on there with graphite transfer paper, so usually reversing the image, which this whole process for me is really rudimentary. I don't have any fancy equipment. So to reverse an image, I just put the piece of paper on a window and draw it from onto the back of the paper. And then start carving. And so I wanted to show you guys how I register these pattern prints. They're a little different since I like to print all the way off the edge of the paper. I start with a big piece of like newsprint or craft paper, and I grid everything out. So my grid lines are these pencil lines that correlate with the edges of that wood block that I have the linoleum piece mounted to. And then you can see my red crop marks. That's where the corners of the paper go once I figure out where I want it placed. And I went ahead and printed the ginkgo leaf in black on the registration page, just to make sure. I don't usually do that, but this one I wanted to make sure that that bottom leaf touched the top of the branch right below it on every single row. Because it is a pattern, it's really important to have everything really straight and lined up and make sure that I consistently get these kind of nice negative spaces in between everything. So that's what's going on there. And then I just put the paper, you know, inside of those crop marks and hold it on there with paper weights, and kind of peel up the paper, ink the block, put the paper down, burnish it, and keep going. And I like to use just one stamp basically when I'm doing the patterns so that everything is exactly the same. I've done ones where I carve the entire block out and ink it all up and put the paper on and ink it and do it all at once, but it doesn't really give me the same effect. It's hard to get that image perfectly lined up. And, you know, if you're carving a pattern, you know, your hand gets tired and not each one of those branches is going to look exactly the same. Your gouge is going to slip. Some of the lines are going to be thicker or thinner. So I like to use just the single linoleum stamp. And then here is my video. So I took a hyperlapse video of just an example of me using this registration paper. I'll play that. So there's my my little paperweight at the top, and I just am doing this on a scrap piece of printmaking paper. I've got a glass plate on the side there where I've got my inks mixed. I got bored of doing the green, so I did this one in, you know, like a baby poop green going up to a golden orange color gradient. So yeah, it's all done by hand. It's all just done on a tabletop. So yeah, and then there's the finished print on the side there.
Out of the press. I don't know if you're going fast, but she's using instead of running it through a press each time, she's got this, it's like a little disc that's wrapped in like a banana leaf or something. And it's padded, it's soft underneath. So it takes the place of the pressure of a press, right?
Yeah. So yeah. I'll use that or like the back of a wooden spoon or something.
Yeah, and so again,
Yeah,
that's a
that- yeah.
skill. And you have another variable in there, right? Because running it through a press is going to give you that smooth, even pressure. Whereas here, you know, she's got the skill or the options of how you burnish it to bring more or less ink onto the paper.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you know, if you're gonna, I think starting out printing, you know, if you're interested in printmaking and want to just do it at your kitchen table, relief printing, linoleum, you know, wood is a little tougher carving wise because you got grain and stuff. And there are a lot of soft, really soft linoleums that you can use that are almost like rubber stamps if you're just getting started on carving. And you know, you're low tech, right? It's not a big investment. You put your
Yeah.
stuff up against the window. You don't need the light table. You know, they can be small and repeated like this. I mean, originally this is how wallpaper was done once upon a time. And
Yeah, yeah. That's what I love about printmaking. It can be as rudimentary as it needs to be for, you know, to fit your lifestyle or what you can accommodate. You don't have to have a bunch of crazy equipment, and it can be
but like
completely
all art, it's
low
addictive.
tech.
You will end up with a $3,000 press one day. And then
Probably.
the slide after this,
pretty-
really pretty. I love the prints on the next slide too.
So
Those two
yeah,
patterns.
these are, yeah, after I've made something, then it's, you know, dry time. And again, it's just what I can do in my house, which is like a clothing line with clothespins. So a couple more patterns that I've done. There's a lupin flower. That was actually like a 3-piece triptych. And then these California poppies. So the poppies, I didn't even make a registration page for it. I just, you know, have one of those big gridded self-healing map cut boards and just lined up that block. Since it was pretty square, just lined it up in the grid and put it on there. So yeah,
They're both beautiful.
that's a little look at my process.
They remind me of, you know, vintage calico prints. You know, not, I guess they're not calico, they're too big to be calico, but they really remind me of vintage fabric prints.
Yeah, that is something I want to experiment with next, is printing some of the stuff on fabric. Yeah, I think it would lend itself well to that.
Yeah, they'd be beautiful. Keep us posted.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens next year. So I'm going to go back to screen share.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
There you go. Okay, so I'm going to, just a minute. My dog wants to go out. Go back to screen sharing just to, oh, did that quit? Where's my, I don't think I quit the app. You know, there it is. Okay. So yeah, I'll just run really quick through. These were the slides that Chelsea was showing, and there's the video that told me I couldn't play it. And so here is a quick screenshot. Oh, actually, the screen was so long I had to double it over, but these are the printmakers that we have currently in this show. And the images on here, except for Jonathan Barkin, I think everybody's is their frame, almost everybody's is their framed piece. But, you know, please come in. You can see this long line of folks, and everybody has more, pretty much everybody has more than the one image, and some of them are completely different from what they submitted. And I think we represented every method here. So is there anybody else who's here who wants to say a quick word that I might have not seen your email saying that you wanted to be here? Speak up now if you want to talk. Okay. So yeah, please come by the gallery and see these, or, you know, go on the, well, we'll close today at 5, and then we'll be reopened again on Thursday. And, but you can certainly shop online, shipping or pickup. And I think that is it for this. And I'm going to do, well, I'll do a quick plug for next month. So the current show is up through the 31st. And next month we will be having our 3rd birthday, and we're proud enough to be having a 3rd birthday, but to be having a 3rd birthday after this year, we're very happy, and we owe it to wonderful artists and wonderful patrons of the art and the wonderful community around us, and to Michael Pratt and Rita Larson, our landlords, who are very benevolent. So what we're going to do for our anniversary is we're just going to be celebrating our member artists. So the front gallery will be another group show of our member artists. We will have at least one former member represented, and we will be announcing a new member. So please join us for that. And we're all working on that. And we have very loosely themed our work with threes. I think we've got some work using 3 different metals. I think I'm doing sort of elementals. I'm doing earth, sky, earth, water, and sky. So we're all kind of interpreting threes in different ways. And I think it's going to be a fun show. And so we will have our preview, which is, before the gallery opens. Things will be for sale because they'll all be, red dot items. So things will be for sale on that preview night on Tuesday. And then our Sunday, when we normally have an artist talk, we will have another party. And if you came to our Christmas party, you know that we love to give gifts. So we will we have some door prizes. We're going to have gift certificates. We've all been making art. We don't have any art to donate for gifts. So we will have gift certificates, which are even better. And if you wear a hat to the party, you will be in line for a door prize for a gift certificate, and they never expire. So put it on your calendar, and we'll also nag you on social media. So come help us celebrate our birthday and just generally celebrate being 2021. And I guess that's about it. If nobody else has anything to say, thank you. My God, we were 2.5 hours, and I'm still interested, and we still have most of our participants. Only about 5 people dropped out. Thank you so much, everybody, for your art and your sharing, and I loved everything that you said. I want to go back and listen to it all again, and I want to take a class in every single I want to come to everyone's studio and you show me how to do what you do. That's the dangerous part of artist talks. So thanks again. So we're still open for another 2.5 hours at the gallery, so get yourself down there. It's a nice day. Go down, have some coffee and ice cream. Or you can get a kimchi hot dog at Goodfoot, go do something. Or, go have a nice brunch and enjoy. Thank you, printmakers.
Thank you, Michelle, and everyone. Great.
I do want to thank too, Davis was kind enough to thank Gail Owen, who is a former member, we still represent Gail, but she's no longer a member. She just, has to, sometimes you just have to pare down what you're committed to. But we do still represent Gail, who I think a lot of you are influenced by Gail with her linoleum. She does reduction linoleum cuts in those sort of tessellated designs, and we still represent her. But she and I, one of the last things she did before she left was she and I spent a wonderful day, one of the nicest days I've had in a while, going through the applications and curating this show and choosing, and I think we made great choices. I'm really happy with everyone that we chose. So this was wonderful. Thank you so much. So thank you to Gail for that, for helping to choose all of these. And thanks to artists. And we will see you guys around either in the gallery or on February 2nd. Bye.